Hello, hello. Good afternoon, viewers at home. My name is Adeotola Michael. Today we are advancing our educational series of Omega Bio-Edutainment. We are advancing with another course, which is Toxicology 2, which is Toxicology 2. Okay. Um, toxi of toxicology is because this is an advanced toxicology. This is advanced toxicology. So this is just a high level of a toxicology course. So it is going to be a shift from the foundational knowledge of toxicology, because in this one, we are going to talk more about occupational toxicology. We'll focus on environmental toxicology, forensic toxicology, pharmaceutical toxicology, and so on and so forth. And just like I said in the foundational toxicology, whereby I define toxicology for us as the study of poison science, the study of poison science, because whenever you say a substance is toxic, that means it is capable of being poisonous to your health. And don't forget that in the foundational toxicology, I told you that we have more than 93, we are living with more than 93% of toxicology, I mean, of toxic substances which are domestic in nature, ranging from insect bites, ranging from sting of mosquitoes, and so on and so forth. And in the introductory toxicology, don't forget that we also look at pollen, sources of toxin, where you can also get all these substances from microorganisms. Okay, so this course, which is toxicology 2, is a build up because it is an advance of the foundational toxicology. And just like I told you, it is going to involve us going deeper into studying the mechanism of action of major uh, toxicants. We are going to see all this as we go on. So just as a kind of taking notes. So the outline for this toxicology 2 is going to involve: number one, we are going to look at the overview of advanced toxicology, or what is known as toxicology 2. It's the same thing. Toxicology 2. We are going to look at the overview. After that, we are going to examine the mechanisms of toxicology of toxicology. Okay, mechanism of toxicology. Then number 3, we are going to look at the relationship between toxicology and public health. Between toxicology and public health. Then we are going to round it up with looking at what are the regulatory bodies, regulatory aspects of toxicology. What are those bodies that we actually specify? Because human being, we cannot do without dealing with toxic substances. I told you that in the early part of discourse, I told you that the issue of whether a substance is going to remain toxic will actually depend on the dosage. Will actually depend on the dosage. So now quickly let's actually start with the overview of toxicology 2. Just like I told you that this toxicology 2 is an advanced form of the foundational toxicology. So what we are actually expected to have dealt with a lot of terms and terminologies under introductory to toxicology. So this is going to be an attempt to go deeper into dealing with toxicology. So this one is going to help, is going to deal with uh, which are those toxicants that can actually cause, that can actually harm the human body, maybe the environment, that can harm and can cause harm to bodily harm. So we are going to see all this and what are the factors. So part of it is that I told you that this is an advanced toxicology. Not only that, this will involve us understanding or studying the mechanism, detailed mechanism of action. It will also involve us dealing with risk assessment. So we will actually see what are the methods and methodology that we should actually use in order to see what are the risks that are involved in taking some of these substances. Knowing fully that I told us that there's no way we will continue to deal with toxin or we will continue to deal with poison, whether we like it or not. So then this also is going to involve us the public health implication, public health implication of toxicology. So then how can it be controlled? So that is what are those, what will be the basic content of this toxicology 2. It is an advanced form of toxicology. It is going to involve us understanding the basic mechanism of action. That is, we are going to start tracing it, each of these toxic substances from the way, from the right away from the time it is being ingested until the mechanism of action is going to be. So then how can we perform the risk assessment? How can we know at which level or to what level will the risk actually be? We are going to do that. So that one will now lead us to the second aspect of today's lecture, which is going to be mechanism, of toxicology. The mechanism is going to be both at molecular level, as well as cellular level. It's going to be as molecular level as well as a cellular level. So under these mechanisms, we are going to actually talk about cellular mechanism. So this is a kind of toxicology that actually involve the cell membrane, anything that has to do with cell membrane, thereby altering signal, especially signal transduction pathway. So what do we mean by signal transduction? Signal transduction is like communication. The way cell do communicate is regarded as a pathway for signal transduction. So anything that involves the cell membrane, so for example now let's say you are a typical cell like this, and if the toxin, let's say this is the toxic substance, if that is the toxic substance, and anytime this toxic substance come in close contact with the plasma membrane, thereby altering cell transduction, that kind of toxicant is known as a cellular toxicant, because it is something that has involved several, let me say, several mechanism, several pathway of the body. So we look at signal transduction pathway, then protein, anyone that affects protein synthesis, anything that affects protein synthesis. If protein is being, if protein synthesis is being altered, you actually know and what it's going to lead as a biologist. So because protein synthesis, most of the enzymes, let me say all enzymes are proteinous in nature. So, and most of the catabolic reaction that takes part in the body, metabolic parts in the body, will actually involve protein synthesis. So, and if any toxicant can actually alter protein synthesis, you will know that it's going to cause a lot of havoc. Then apart from that, some of these toxicants, can also alter cell division, be it mitosis or meiosis. It can also alter cell division. So any toxicant that has its effect either directly or indirectly on the cell division. Don't forget that there are two basic cell division: mitotic, which has to do with development and repair of worn out tissues, and meiotic, the one that has to do with fertilization. So anyone that involves any of this one is actually regarded as a cellular mechanism of toxicant. Okay, so anyone that affects protein synthesis, anyone that has to do with signals transduction pathway, anyone that has to do with exerting its effect on the plasma membrane, and anyone that has to do with cell diffusion, as well as anyone that can trigger apoptosis. Apoptosis is also regarded as a cellular mechanism. And what do we understand by apoptosis? That is apoptosis is when a cell commits suicide. So because that is apoptosis, that is irreversible death in cell. Okay, so that one, after cellular mechanism, the next one that we are going to actually deal with is going to be molecular mechanisms. Okay, so I told you that cellular mechanism will actually involve the impairment of certain substances on the cell membrane, on the signal transduction pathway, on protein synthesis, on cell division pathway, on anyone that can trigger apoptosis. All these are mechanisms that can be regarded as a cellular. So that one will lead us to the second type of mechanism. The second type of mechanism, which is molecular. So at this point, when we mention molecule, that is telling us that any interference, that has to do with interference on biomolecules. And if you talk about that, is anyone that has either direct or indirect effect on any of these. So, and when you talk of that, you are referring to DNA. Okay, not only that, protein, RNA, or lipids, and okay, protein, especially enzymes. All this that has direct effect on biomolecules, all this will undergo what is actually called molecular level molecular level mechanism or disruption. Molecular level effects on biomolecules. So that is actually regarded as this. So, and molecular level disruption will eventually lead to, is going to initiate carcinogenesis. Carcinogenesis is going to lead to mutagenesis. That is genesis, initiation of mutation. Then it's also going to lead to effects, could be teratogenesis. Okay, all these are molecule level disruption. Molecule level disruption. So after cellular level disruption, the second one is a molecular level disruption, and that is one that has effect on major biomolecule in the system. For example, intercalating of some certain compound on DNA, and anything that has effect on DNA, we actually know that it is going to be genetic at the end of the day. So that is that. And apart from leading to cancer or initiation of a process called carcinogenesis or initiation of mutagenesis or teratogenesis, it will also, the biomolecular level disruption will also lead to certain pathologies, that is disease conditions, certain disease conditions. So that can actually trigger that as well. Okay, so that is the third, the second aspect of toxicology mechanism of intervention or interference in toxicology. So the third one, which is receptor binding, the third one is receptor binding stroke enzyme inhibition. Receptor binding stroke enzyme inhibition. There are certain molecules that their effects will go, and especially the organophosphates, e.g. organophosphates. These organophosphates will go and interfere with an enzyme which is called acetylcholinesterase. That is, this is an enzyme that is being secreted by the nervous system. So, for example, let's say we have something like this. So if this one is the active site of an enzyme, and if this one is actually coming from this one is a toxicant. Don't forget that we are talking about receptor and enzyme inhibition pathway of by toxicant. So this toxicant, this substance, is going to compete with the same active site on this enzyme. Let's say this one is an enzyme that is found on the central nervous system, and under normal circumstances, toxicants are coming up with a very similar structure to the normal binding of the enzyme, this enzyme acetylcholinesterase that we have in the central nervous system. So whenever you now have toxicant competing for the same sites on this. That one can lead to what is known as a receptor enzyme inhibition mechanism, and it is very, very common. This one is very, very common in nerve cells. It's very, very common in nerve cells, and